Welcome to the Karan Singh VAAD-VIVAAD debate competition. You're watching JUS Punjabi and I'm your host Ashmita. We are in week 6 of the competition and our contestants have been giving it their all, arguing for both sides of the resolution. This resolution, which determines how their debate and their argument will take shape, has forced our contestants into not just a pro position, but a neg position against the main resolution. This competition is once again showcasing Sikh youth in the Northeast and testing their debate skills as per the Lincoln Douglas debate format.
All right, Samir, so this is your second round of debate. How do you feel going into this?
A little tense, but I think I'm ready.
Are there any big changes you had to make?
Just know to keep my composure this time.
All right, sounds good. Good luck. Hi, Amreen. So you're arguing the opposite sides today. So how do you feel about that?
It'll be good to see the other side and, get some points that I never got to bring across from the other side, so I'll see.
Are there any improvements you had to make from your last round?
I think just focusing on my rebuttal and my crystallization and, just getting more fierce out there, so.
Sounds good. Good luck.
And I have to tell you, these young contestants have been working so hard. Many months of preparation, training from the debate show coaches, and guidance from the debate show creator, and of course, the judges, as well as anyone else closely involved with the organization of this program, has stayed connected to these contestants throughout the process to guide them on the proper etiquettes of debate. Because a debate is more than just a shouting match. It's a logical and thoughtful conversation. So today, once again, we are continuing the quarterfinals of the Karan Singh VAAD-VIVAAD debate competition on JUS Punjabi. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome, arguing for the pro side, Sumer Singh. Welcome back, Sumer. Good to have you. And arguing for the neg side, Amreen Gurm. Amreen, welcome back. Please shake hands. So once again, we have Sumer, Amreen on stage with us. Debate 7 is about to kick off in this amazing debate competition. Sumer, you've done this now once before. You were on that side last time. How does it feel arguing the opposite side? Is it harder? Is it easier?
I think it's good to have the perspective from both sides to be able to debate.
Absolutely. And what about you, Amreen? Do you feel you have an advantage going into the second round of these debates?
I feel like I can learn from my first time, but it'll be good to see from another way.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you both the best of luck. Let's start debate 7.
Cool. All right, we'll start with Sumer on the pro side, and you have 4 minutes to begin your constructive speech, starting now.
I affirm the resolution, a Gurdwara is a place of worship for Sikhs. My value is Sikhi, therefore my Sikh framework is worship. Before I begin making my case, it is important to note that any area of the Gurdwara that allows people to worship and study Sikhi better contributes to a Gurdwara's position as a place of worship. My first contention is Gurdwaras are defined by Gurbani as places of worship. Gurbani itself establishes a Gurdwara's primary purpose is worship. As stated in the Guru Granth Sahib, Nanak ke kar keval naam. This means the house of Nanak contains only one thing, and that is naam. And Gurdware har kirtan suniye. This means in the Gurdwara, we listen to the Kirtan of Vaheguru. These commandments explicitly define the Gurdwara as a sacred space designated for spiritual connection through Naam and Kirtan, which are fundamental forms of Sikh worship. My second contention is historical development confirms Gurdwaras as centers of worship. The historical development of Gurdwaras clearly establishes them as places of worship. From the time of Guru Nanak to the present day, Gurdwaras have been constructed specifically to house the Guru Granth Sahib and facilitate devotional practices. The architectural elements of Gurdwaras, including the presence of the Darbar Sahib, the Nishan Sahib, and dedicated spaces for Kirtan, all point to worship as the primary function of a Gurdwara. The institutionalization of Gurdwaras by Guru Nanak and the subsequent establishment of the Harmandir Sahib by Guru Arjan further confirms their sacred purpose as places where Sikhs gather specifically to connect with Vaheguru. Even during periods of persecution, Sikhs risk their lives to maintain Gurdwaras as centers of worship, demonstrating their fundamental importance to Sikh religious practice. Additionally, the fact that Gurdwaras worldwide follow similar protocols regarding the reverence of Guru Granth Sahib and the performance of daily ceremonies like Prakash and Sukhasan underscores their consistent function as places dedicated to worship across time and geography. My third contention is Sikh worship encompasses both Seva and Simran. According to the Sikh Rehat Maryada, worship in Sikhi is holistically defined through the twin practices of Seva, known as selfless service, and Simran, the remembrance of Vaheguru. A Gurdwara serves as the essential facilitator of these practices by providing both the spiritual enlightenment for Simran through Kirtan and scripture recitation, and opportunities for Seva through langar and community service. Without either element, Sikh worship would be incomplete. The idea of Seva can be a very broad and encompass many different activities, such as langar, blood drives, and protesting oppression against the marginalized. No wonder Guru Nanak protested against Babur's oppression when he declared, Khurasan Kasmana Kiya, Hindustan Daraya. This means Khurasan was spared, but Hindustan was terrorized by Babur. This act of standing up for the oppressed is the highest form of Seva. While Gurdwaras host various activities beyond prayer services, such as language classes and langar, these activities ultimately enhance worship. Language classes enable Sikhs to read Gurmukhi, deepening their understanding of Gurbani. Langar teaches core Sikh values like equality and humility. The revolutionary nature of langar is particularly significant. In South Asian society, where the Hindu caste system prevailed, Guru Amar Das transformed langar by requiring all visitors to first eat langar together as equals before seeing him. The practice ensured people would shed their caste identity as commanded by Gurbani, making Sikh worship not merely ritualistic but a practical implementation of Sikh principles. This pragmatic approach to worship establishes Sikhi as a modern religion beyond ritualism, where Seva and Simran form the foundation of Gurdwaras, and all activities within them become integral components of worship. The affirmative case rests.
Thank you, Sumer. Amreen, would you like to use any of your prep time?
I'll take a minute, please.
1 minute?
1 minute, yes.
Okay, 1 minute. All right, your 1 minute prep time is up, and you may now begin the negative, constructive, and rebuttal speech, starting now.
I negate the resolution, a Gurdwara is a place of worship. My value is Sikhi, and my moral framework is unity. Unity is a state of being united or joined as a whole. Contention 1, education of the religion of Sikhi. The word Sikh means learner or seeker of truth. The Sikh collation states that the Gurdwara is a Sikh place of learning and worship where the community gathers. According to Sikhi Wiki, Gatha is verbal explanation of Gurbani in our great history. Gatha is both a spiritual and historical discourse. It endows the listener with spiritual and worldly knowledge from the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. From this, you can gather that gaining knowledge from the scripture is vital. Khalsa school is a great way for Sikh youth to be educated about their religion. Samvad is exchanging views and learning from each other. When it comes to social and political views, we should move to Samvad. It's a higher level of learning and it's more productive. The Siddha Gosti is an example of such dialogue that is enshrined in the Guru Granth Sahib. It gives in detail the interaction between Guru Nanak and Hindu Gosiddhas. These are educational conversations with value of communication, as we should do too. Contention 2, Seva and volunteering in Gurdwaras. Many Gurdwaras give volunteer opportunities that often bring the community together. Some examples are food drives, cleaning, cooking, etc. Without this, it defeats the whole purpose of the 3 principles of Sikhi, Naam Japo, Kirt Karo, and Van Shako. The essence of Sikhi is to put your learning into a practical way. Gathering and learning cannot be alone. Worship has to come with it. The term Bella Pangat Picho Sangat comes from Guru Amar Das Ji, explaining to feed yourself before sitting with Sangat to enforce equality and meet physical needs of body like hunger. Gurdwara is one of the only religious places of worship where langar and seva are present. As stated by Harvard University, a service institution that contains a langar hall where large communal meals are prepared and served, and a place where the community may discuss the political and social affairs of the day. Contention 3, religious holidays and events. Holidays such as Vaisakhi, Bandi Chor, etc. gather Sangat and the community. The holidays revolve around our religion and will be appropriate to celebrate these in a religious setting. Weddings are in Gurdwaras to remember the religious aspect of marriage. According to Britannica Encyclopedia, it states that it also serves as a meeting place for conducting business of the congregation and wedding initiation ceremonies. The more historically important Gurdwaras serve as centers of pilgrimage during festivals. My case is dismissed.
You should continue with the rebuttal also.
Okay. So for my rebuttal, my opponent mentioned that their value framework was worship, which in both cases, it can go in both ways. Because for the worship, you also have to apply that worship to doing seva and to volunteering for a community. My opponent's contention 1 was that you do Gurbani and Kirtan, and Gurdwara is defined as a sacred place of worship. However, you need to apply that Gurbani that you learn from the scripture. Because without just learning the scripture and not applying it, you're not doing any benefit to your community. One great example is Banda Singh Bahadur. Guru Gobind Singh Ji transformed him from just doing meditation and being a monk to applying that Gurbani and that worship and that thought into being a warrior and benefiting his community. For contention 2, centers of worship for him has an architecture meant for kirtan. Well, a kitchen is also part of the architecture in a Gurdwara, and a kitchen is meant to cook food together as a sangat and to humbly serve and to do seva as together as a community. Because sangat is something that is defined differently than a crowd. Because a sangat is when the whole community is together in a Gurdwara and they're worshipping Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and we're applying that. And we're doing activities and volunteering stuff such as Khalsa Aid. Khalsa Aid, you do the volunteering and food drives and clothing drives in the Gurdwara because that is the center of where we learned it to where we apply it. And for contention 3, for seva and simran, well, the community would gather and worship comes along with that. Because langar is something that isn't just coming with worship, you gotta apply that. And this goes for both cases where you can't just do all these volunteering things without remembering that the worship that you learn from these scriptures. And to use the Gurbani to be able to fight for your right for worship, as he mentioned, that there are a lot of people who fought in history for the places of worship. But the reason why they learned it is from the worship, but they used that worship that they learned from to fight to get the freedom back to worship in these Gurdwaras. But in order to do that, you have to be able to apply it first in the real world. My rebuttal is dismissed.
All right, thank you, Amreen. Now, how much prep time would you like to use, Samir?
I'll take 3 minutes.
All right, starting now, 3 minutes. All right, Samir, your 3 minutes of prep timer up, and you may now begin the rebuttal for the pro side, and you have 3 minutes starting now.
In the first contention, the neg case mentioned the education of the religion of Sikhi. Khalsa school stems from the idea of worship. We must ask ourselves, why do we even go to Khalsa school? To take these Gurmukhi classes and to take Sikh history classes, what are we truly learning? And why are we trying to achieve? What is the final goal here? When we take these Gurmukhi classes, the end goal is to be able to read Punjabi and understand it and take in that information and use it in our daily lives. However, the ultimate goal is to, at the end of the day, read the Guru Granth Sahib, correct? And if that is true, that means that's the highest form of worship is reading the Guru Granth Sahib. And then, in the second contention, it's mentioned seva and volunteering in Gurdwaras. The mention of langar is crucial in this contention. And langar is stemming from the idea of seva. Seva, where does the idea of seva branch from? The idea of seva branches from our Sikh gurus. Our Sikh gurus told us about seva and told us about Simran as key principles for Sikhi. And these key principles are put to use during our langar as they supplied all of the rules as to what langar truly demonstrates. And in the idea of religious holidays and events, these holidays and events often are remembrances of our gurus and often demonstrate the ideas of what our gurus are trying to represent, whether it's their birthday, whether it's their martyrdom, or whether it's their birth. All of these facets are remembering our guru and their teachings, and these are the worship that we gain from the spiritual figures that were our gurus. And I can see the rest of my time.
All right, thank you, Samir. You have up to 3 minutes left before your final speech.
Okay, I'll just use all of it.
Okay, 3 minutes starting now. All right, Samir, that's 3 minutes of your prep time, and you may now begin your final speech, which is 3 minutes starting now.
The worship is the main priority of our Gurdwaras. In my first contention, I mentioned Gurdwaras are defined by Gurbani as places of worship. This was countered by saying we must truly intake what the Gurbani is saying. And I offered the lines, Nanak ke kar keval naam, which means the house of Nanak contains only one thing, and that is naam. And Gurdware har kirtan suniye, which means in the Gurdwara we listen to the kirtan of Vaheguru. These two lines demonstrate the idea of worship and are straight from the Guru Granth Sahib and are perfect examples that define why a Gurdwara is simply made for worship. In my second contention, I mentioned how the historical development confirms Gurdwaras as centers of worship. This was countered by bringing the argument of the kitchen in the Langar Hall. This, however, stems from the teachings of Guru Amar Das. The true intake of Langar is because of the seva. That is the main principle that our gurus tried to spread and one of the main teachings of Sikhism. Langar stems from this seva, and because of that, the kitchen is adjacent to the Langar Hall and is therefore also a example of seva, which is a key Sikh principle. And in contention 3, I argue that Sikh worship encompasses both the seva and Simran. Once again, the use of the rebuttal was for the concept of Langar, and that is once again reiterated, and that can once again be stemmed from seva and is a part of the true idea that our gurus tried to spread. And then arguing the contentions from the other side of education of the religion of Sikhi, I mentioned how Khalsa school stems from worship, and the true purpose of Khalsa school is about Gurbani and to learn and to one day read the Guru Granth Sahib and understand Sikh history. Second, their second contention stated seva and volunteering in Gurdwaras. This was once again contradicted by the idea of Langar, going into the ideology of worship rather than the ideology of unity, as mentioned in our values. And in the contention number 3, it mentioned the religious holidays and events. Although there are the marriage services, which the opposing side mentioned, those are holidays that were created by our Sangat and created by our leaders. And often these holidays and events are usually upon the remembrance of a Sikh Guru. And therefore, these are to go more into the idea of worship. The rest of my case.
All right, thank you, Sumir. Amreen, you have up to 5 minutes left of prep time before your final speech.
I'll take 3.
3 minutes starting now. Your 3 minutes of prep time are up, and you may now begin your final speech on the negative side, starting now.
I think I won in my argument for numerous reasons. First of all, my opponent mentioned how in his rebuttal that children learn to do kirtan and how they go to Khalsa school to learn new things and learn Gurbani, and the end goal is to apply it. So this completely supports my case, because in order to learn something new, you also have to apply it. The remembrance of coming together as a community, you can't do it alone. Like I said earlier, there's no use to learning if you can't apply it. Seva is an action. It's not just a word that Guru said. Guruji didn't just say to do it, he actually applied it. He did it himself. Unity comes with seva, gathering. Unity is something we do together as a community. And like I mentioned earlier, Sangat is a completely different word from a crowd, because Sangat is a community of people that follow Guru Granth Sahib Ji in the Gurdwara, who do seva, who do all these volunteering things to help the community. I stuck with my framework with unity. As Guru said, there's no use to applying it if we're not together, if we're not applying this Gurbani and this worship that we do in Gurdwaras. And also festivals in Gurdwaras such as weddings or Vaisakhi, we're also remembering the religious aspect of that in those holidays. And there's numerous things that you can do in these festivals like seva. In a place of worship, he also mentioned his crystallization for only Naam and to do Kirtan. However, while that's true, he also left out that it goes hand in hand with seva, because you cannot just do Kirtan and Katha and Gurdwara without applying it, without taking in the knowledge you learned from this and putting it in anywhere in life, anywhere in the community, whether it's a Sikh community or not. But anything that we learn from these scriptures is so vital, because Guruji taught us this. Guruji said, you cannot just do this. You cannot just listen to scriptures and sit there. Like I said earlier with my example, Banda Singh Bahadur, he was turned from a monk because Guru Gobind Singh Ji said, that's wrong. You can't just meditate and be a monk and not help your community and go fight for what's right and go fight for your freedom to worship again. You cannot worship again without being able to do seva, and you cannot worship if you don't fight and use actions. My crystallization is dismissed.
All right, debaters, thank you both. That concludes this round.
So you just finished both rounds of debate. How did it go?
I think it went well at the end. I think I got my groove later.
What do you think was the most challenging part?
I think it was just adjusting from going from online to in person on a podium and just presenting.
So do you think you won?
Could have gone either way. It's up to the judges.
Sounds good. Good luck. So you just finished both rounds of debate. What's the first thing you want to do right now?
I just want to reflect on what I've done so far. Relax. It's been a long, tiring day, but it was definitely worth it and a good experience.
Do you have any tips for our next contestants?
I will just say it's the last round, so just, finish it off strong, and again, don't let those jitters get to you, because that's getting in the way, because you all are talented, so don't let nervousness get in the way.
And do you think you won?
I'm not sure. I think everyone's a winner at this point, so.
Perfect. Good luck.
Thank you.
Hello, judges.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Again.
We can see the finish line in sight
That's
for
right.
the quarterfinals.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had an incredible debate that we just witnessed. So Mayor from Massachusetts arguing on the pro this time, and Amreen from New Jersey arguing on the neg. As a coach, I thought this was, at least from a speaking presence perspective, their best performance so far in the quarterfinals. I think both of them really hit their stride. They looked comfortable up there, and we're really making the case for their side. I thought the quality of examples as well was really, really strong. And I know you have almost a bunch of pages written here where you're going to be rehashing it very soon. Now, for you all, you get to decide how effective those techniques were, the broader arguments that they put forth in upholding or negating the resolution. So best of luck.
Maybe just starting off with what Digital was saying, the strong points, and where he inoculated. I think that was his third point, right? When he started off saying that Sikh worship is Seva and Simran, and that's the practical implication. Seva is a practical implication of worship, right? So like, I feel like with her second contention, with what she was trying to say, like, oh, but there's also Seva in Gurdwara settings. Yeah. Like, just like the Joe was saying, like that, when he starts off, Samir starts off with that, like, I feel like it's really hard for her to really come back and address it. Right. And I feel like she just kept reiterating something that was supporting Samir's statement about Seva is a practical implication of worship, right? So I felt like that was such a strong point, and that one went through. But yeah, I mean,
I would say, I think I agree that like her second contention on talking about how Seva and volunteering brings in like community service and like it also brings in the food drives, like that was kind of, at that point it was a little, not irrelevant because it's contention, but it was, she was saying that knowing that he'd already said basically the exact opposite. But I do think in her neg rebuttal, which was again in the same speech, I do think like, even though, yes, she went a little bit over on saying like applying the actual seva into your worship, I think when she said it, especially in the first rebuttal speech, I was really impressed with the way she said Langar isn't just about worship, just like how Sumer was saying it in the pro, but it's about applying it too, because you can't, basically I think she's trying to say there has to be some separation. You can't just call all of it worship. And then she kind of went along and reiterated that, especially in her crystallization when she said like, again, like we need to apply all the unity comes with the seva, tying it back to her value criterion, saying about how like, and then she went back to her idea of the Sangat is not equal to the crowd. We need to help the community and apply our ideas of seva, which aren't just worship, but like apply in a practical sense back to the community. So in that way, I think that was kind of like, we've seen this idea of treating seva as a form of worship. And I think she had one of the best counters I've witnessed in this round so far on like mitigating that and like saying, no, there has to be some separation, even though it is kind of involved in the worship. And I think also that tied, it kind of went, I believe what she said, because in her second contention, she brought up like 3 pillars of Sikhism, right? Like Nam Japna, Kirt Karna, Van Japna. And again, like Nam Japna is what most people focus on for the worship, but she brought up all 3 of these pillars like being equal. So I think that furthered her point on we have to apply the Nam Japna and like the pure worship to Kirt Karna and like the seva and like have that be in a practical sense.
Sumer did a great job kind of claiming that early, right? And then Amreen did a great job of trying to frame it differently, right? And then she also did a great job of carrying it through. So we're all on the same page about that. But I think the question now is like, were her attempts enough to like supersede what Sumer did early? You see what I mean? You know, like whose are we going to stick with through it all? And that's where I don't necessarily feel the most convinced that she would carry that point. Because like I said, because while I understand her argument that application is key, I still feel like that's still sufficiently covered in his third contention. Because when he talks about seva, seva's community service, right? And then that in and of by itself is an application of the teachings, right? So I still feel like he sufficiently covered both of those aspects. He covered the theoretical component, and then he also covered the practical application of that. So, yeah.
No, I feel like because she was able to have her own contention about the 3 distinct pillars, and then bring in the rebuttal about Banda Singh Bahadur having the warrior and the spiritual, and then have the Langar being separated into like the worship seva aspect versus like the actual practical application. I feel like those 3 things are quite a lot to counter one contention. So I think maybe that's just an opinion thing. I feel like that was enough, at least to convince me beyond the just, because also he mentioned like even blood drives and like fights against oppression are considered worship. And I feel like that was a bit of a stretch for me to like internalize, because like, I don't think a blood drive, I don't know, it just doesn't feel the same as
I know
worship.
what you mean, because I feel like that's kind of a trend I feel like we've noticed today too, from the other rounds as well, that, you know, it's kind of easy sometimes to just call things worship.
Yeah.
Anything that is done in, any kind of seva,
Mm-hmm.
food drive, blood drive, of course, language seva,
Yeah.
just anything you could imagine. It's like, oh, this is just another form of
Yeah.
worship. But I think you said it best, Amber, earlier in one of the other deliberations we had, that sometimes it becomes a little lazy when you just keep trying to extend it out too much. So I agree with that.
And I do feel like he had, again, that was like an amazing first contention in the first speech, but like the carry through was like a little bit of also just reiterating it too. Like she had like these 3 points that all kind of countered that. And then he just kind of went back on like, he literally said, he used the same argument for the contention 3 as he did for 2, that Langar is seva, this is seva.
Right.
He reiterated literally that without expanding on it too. So that's why if he had carried it on more and said, no, I believe that Langar is only worship and seva is only worship because this, like, it could have convinced me more, but
Right.
again, it's like he had the first dibs, she had the last word.
I mean, I liked how she ended her. I thought she ended really strong.
Mhm.
I like both of their ending. I just thought she was more confident.
Uh-huh.
I liked his just in terms of like how he structured it because he briefly went over all 3 of his, but he was like, "This is my first contention. This is what she said to counter it, but this, right?" I felt like for each one, at least for all 3 of them, like I had this is what he said. Then he specified this is what she countered.
Yeah.
But there's this, right? So like he always came back to the argument. The third one was the only one that I felt like he didn't really come back to as strongly. The first 2 I thought he came back to pretty strongly. Third one he didn't come back that strongly. Then
Are we talking about the holiday, the Sikh holiday one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I thought he did good because he went right into all of her contentions as well and like briefly summarized those. So I just like the structure of how he laid everything out. But yeah, with her confidence,
I do have a question though, because so she made a point of it in her crystallization to bring up her unity framework again for value criteria and unity, and then discuss how her framework is superior. Do you guys feel convinced that her contentions and the way that she maintained them suit a value criterion like unity? Because she didn't really push the unity narrative. That's the thing. Whereas like
She did reiterate how, like, about the Sangat, because I have a quote that unity comes with seva, and then she reiterated that Sangat is not just a crowd, it's a community of people coming together for the sake of community.
But that's at the end though, right? She said the crystallization for it.
And then one thing I also want to circle back to real quick is her third contention about the Sikh holidays and Baisakhi and etc. Because I feel like I didn't love Sumer's rebuttal to that because first of all he let the marriages part slide. I think that makes sense though. And then he said basically that we're like worshipping our guru's remembrance, which felt, at least from my point of view, for Sikhism felt a little bit controversial because the gurus don't want us to celebrate like them. As
that was my immediate thought then. Too.
Yeah.
So I was like, the whole thing that we are against is ritualism, idol worship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I do wish she could have called it out more, but I feel like that wasn't the greatest rebuttal for that. And also she would have had to do that in her crystallization speech.
Right.
And
I do think I agree. Like his rebuttal to the third contention was his weakest by far. Like I don't even think he did it. Also,
he did it, but it wasn't the strongest attempt.
Yeah. It's just turned the idea of Sikhism to a little bit more ritualistic. And again, that's why it kind of made me feel a little less convinced about his idea that seva is all worship, because he's extending so much to worship that even the guru's specific remembrance is worship. So like this umbrella term is becoming so much broader that it doesn't hold as much water unless he's specifically calling out like a little bit more. Yeah. So I feel like with that rebuttal, it actually weakened my idea of his contention. So overall, should we walk through the three frameworks? So we have evidence. We say maybe equal.
I say roughly equal, maybe a little lean towards Sumer.
Okay. Well, let's go with equal for now, because I do think she brought a lot of good evidence as well.
Yeah.
But I want to go through all three first.
Value criterion, I think both of you guys said the worship one seemed more carried through.
Yeah, carried through, and supported as well, like from the get-go.
Yeah.
That's true. And then I don't think, she never really addressed my value criterion is necessarily better than worship. Yeah. So that would have been a good call.
Yeah. She brought hers up again, but like you said, she didn't kind of elaborate on why it's superior as far as I was concerned.
And then finally for the clash, I think Amreen did a really good job of clashing afterwards, but he did have a strong start initially.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there are any other points that were left behind. He didn't really address her thing of the Khalsa aid and like drives in the Gurdwara, which I feel like was a strong part of hers that like differentiates that. Right. But
and then his clash on the religious holidays we'd already discussed was kind of weak.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of, he was alluding more to like idol worship essentially. in some ways, ritualism, idol worship, things like that, where it's like that's not really what
Yeah.
we're celebrating their teachings. I feel like more so.
So Clash seems a little even.
Yeah,
But
Clash
then-
maybe a little bit towards Omreen, because I feel like whatever she did make rebuttals.
Yeah.
They
I
were
think she
much more
carried
well
through the
thought out.
rebuttals
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
He had a really strong first speech.
Yeah.
Another type of argument that includes a lot of logical fallacies is this argument for moderation. So if we have two sides on a debate, it's very tempting for us to say, well, neither side is truly right. It's something in the middle. While this often is the case, and it might be the case in a lot of situations, there's no law of the universe that tells us the middle is always true. Sometimes the truth is just the truth. It's on one side or on the other side, or maybe it's another option, but it's not necessarily found in the middle. So be aware of this when your opponent or when someone in the real world says, well, let's just do a compromise, let's meet in the middle. Sometimes that might be useful for, dealing with things personally and in an amicable way. And sometimes the middle is where the truth is found. But it's not always where the truth is found. And don't use that in and of itself as an argument. That's where a valid argument can become a fallacy.
Welcome back to the Karan Singh VAAD-VIVAAD debate competition. I have the judges' decision as well as the audience favorites for tonight's debate. I want to take a moment here and thank our audiences for watching along, following along, and engaging with our program by choosing your favorites each week. We have seen 8 exceptional contestants in this round, but of course, only 4 will advance to the semifinals. The final 4 have not yet been decided. So before we get to the judges' decision, I'm happy to announce this week's audience favorite. And the audience favorite for this week goes to Sumer Singh. Congratulations, Sumer. As always, the audience seems to love you up on this stage. What do you have to say to them?
Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
All right. This is the decision that we've all been waiting for. Once again, we have a live audience with us and all of you watching at home. The judges have spoken and they've once again used various criteria afforded to them by the Lincoln Douglas debate model. And the winner for debate 7 of the Karan Singh VAAD-VIVAAD debate show is Sumer Singh. Congratulations, Sumer. And with that, another debate comes to an end. We will pick up right here next week. Until then, you can write to us at ashmita@justbroadcasting.com or info@justbroadcasting.com. Of course, follow along on our social media pages. This is Ashmita signing off.
I'm Upkaran Singh Pogal, a tech professional and real estate investor. Like many people, I used to think the only way to build wealth was by working hard at a 9-to-5 job. That all changed when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The book opened my eyes to the power of investing, how real estate can create passive income and long-term wealth rather than just relying on a paycheck. I realized that building a portfolio of properties was a way to create financial freedom and gain control over my future. So, I dove into real estate investing, and let me tell you, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Investing is key to securing financial independence. Whether you're looking for side income or a long-term strategy, real estate can make it happen. I'm passionate about giving back and teaching others how to get started on their investing journey too. So, if you're interested in learning more about real estate investing, feel free to follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This is Harman Singh, Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition. For more than 20 years, the Sikh Coalition has worked to reduce hate, violence and discrimination experienced by the Sikh community. Nationwide, we work in the court system, in policy, in education, community development, and media and communications to raise the Sikh profile and build a new future for Sikh youth. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.